Hello, my name is Justin, and today I'm going to show you how to count the number of spaces in a sentence using Scratch. So let's start out by getting our when run is clicked block to start our program, and we're going to need some way to get input from the user to take that sentence. So let's go here into sensing, and this has this ask and wait block. Now this will allow you to ask a sentence, so let's say, what is your sentence? And wait. And when you run it, your sprite will ask you, what is your sentence? And you can type in a sentence here. So let's say, hello there. Now this doesn't have much use yet, but that sentence, hello there, will be stored right here in this variable answer. It acts just like other variables you have here, but this is specifically for what you enter into that little box of input that pops up right here. So now that we can get our sentence, we need to start thinking about how we're going to go through the sentence and count the number of spaces. So computers, they store sentences as something called a string. So that's just a bunch of characters right next to each other. It doesn't recognize this full sentence. The computer says, oh, this is an H, and then it's followed by an E, followed by an L, and so on, all the way down, and it ends in an E here. So it only looks at each individual character or letter here, and then it mushes them all together and says that's a string. So you can go through this string and count, say how large it is. So this string is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because it counts this space here as a character. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this is 11 characters long. And you can look at each individual character by checking its index. So its index is how far it is from the start of the sentence. So this is counted as the first index. So H is the first letter here. The character at the second index is E, and the third would be an L, and so on. And so this would be 4, 5, 6. So this space here would be at the 6th index, and so on all the way down till you get to here. This would be the 11th index. So if we could just go through each one of these characters and ask, hey, is this a space? And count up all of the spaces at the end, then we can count the total number of spaces in a sentence. So we have to keep track both of what index we're on and what the total number of spaces is. So we need two different variables here. We can create those variables right here. Let's delete this variable they give us and say, let's make another one for index, and that'll check what index we are in the sentence. And then let's also make another one for number of spaces to count the total number of spaces. So we need to loop through this entire sentence, starting out on the first letter and going forward by 1 each time until we reach the end. We can do this with our repeat block here. So this will do whatever we need to do and then do it again, and it'll do it a total of 10 times. Now we need to keep track of which character we're on with our index. So let's start out by setting our index to 1. And this index needs to increase all the way up to the length of the sentence. Scratch allows us to find the length of the sentence using, in operators here, length of, and it'll tell you the length of the sentence. Now remember, the sentence isn't something we're going to type here, it's this answer that we got from our input here. So we can start out at the beginning and repeat until the end of the sentence. Now we also need to set our number of spaces to 0, so that way we always start out at 0 in case you want to run this multiple times. Now, at each character, we need to check, hey, is this character a space or something else? And if it's a space, then we want to increase the number of spaces. So we can do that with our if block. So if, and we can use the letter of to find what letter is at each index. And again, we're going to use answer instead of a different sentence. And instead of a specific point, we're going to check our index. So this will tell us what the letter is at each index. So if the index was, say, 3, this would tell us that's a letter L. Now we need to check, is that letter a space? And we can use that with just the normal equals here. Except, instead of a number here, we can just put a space. Now it's kind of hard to see, but you can see the little cursor moving. If you put a space there, then it'll check if that letter is a space. So if it is a space, then we want to increase our number of spaces by 1. So we want to set our number of spaces, and we want to add 1 to it. So whatever our number of spaces is already, we want to add 1. Now if we just ran this, it would just keep checking the same letter here, because we never actually increased our index. Index will just always be 1. So we just continually check this letter until we've done it 11 times. So we want to increase our index to tell it to move to the next letter. And we want to do that outside of the if. So whether or not it's a space, we want to do it no matter what. So make sure it's outside of this if at the end. Then we can set index to, and we can get an addition here. That way we can add index plus 1. And now this should ask for a sentence, get that sentence in, and store it into answer here. Then it'll set index and number of spaces to their starting values. Index will be set to 1, so we start right at the beginning of the sentence, and number of spaces will be set to 0. Then we should repeat throughout the entire sentence, so do it once for every letter. That's the length of the sentence. We check, is the letter at the current index of answer equal to space, and there's a space right here, it's hard to see. And if it is, then we add 1 to our number of spaces. So we set number of spaces to number of spaces plus 1. And whether or not that's a space, we need to increase our index to tell it to move to the next character here. Now at the end of that, we should have the total number of spaces in the sentence. And now we probably want it to say what the total number of spaces is. So let's say the number of spaces in your sentence is. Now we can't just put the number of spaces here. Instead, we need to use a join here. So this will allow you to smush multiple sentences together. And so we can have this sentence here, and then we can put on the number of spaces variable that we had there. So it'll say the number of spaces the number of spaces in your sentence is number of spaces. And so we can run this. It'll ask for a sentence. Let's put in our sentence hello there. And if we press enter, it should say the number of spaces in your sentence is 1, because there was 1 space here. And we can test that out, run it again with some different ones. This is a long sentence with a lot of spaces. You can see this should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces in it. There we go, 9 spaces. And this should also work if you say just typed in random garbage and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces and some more random garbage. So there's only 5 spaces in here. It should say 5 spaces. And that's how you can count the number of spaces in a sentence using Scratch.